protests first started on April 28 as a response to controversial fiscal reform introduced by President Ivan Dukee. President saw this as a solution for decreasing economy due to pandemic, and he saw it as only hope to avoid economic crisis. Colombia's gross domestic product dropped by 6.8% last year, the deepest crash in half a century. However, proposed value-added tax increase on everyday goods would disproportionately impact middle and working classes and escalate inequality in the country's pandemic-hit economy. In some cities in the north, 30% of people live in extreme poverty, and even in Medellin, where I am today, Colombia's economic powerhouse, that figure amounts to 9%, according to official sources. Indigenous groups have also joined in the protests. They are among those hardest hit by the continuing violence in rural areas, where dissident members of the FARC rebel groups fight the security forces as well as rival armed groups. After 4 days of protest, Dukee has withdrawn the proposed reform, but popular anger has only kept growing. One of the main reasons was police brutality that went viral with videos of policemen using tear gas and batons, which resulted in many injured, and 25 people were killed in initial protests. On 11th of May, that figure was updated to at least 42 people and hundreds of injured. Human rights groups reported that riot police had not only used tear gas to disperse protesters, but in some cases shot live ammunition. Far from curbing the protests, police brutality has become a focal point for the demonstrators, who are now calling for an independent international inquiry into the deaths. Footage that you're looking at now I recorded on 19th of May, so riots are still on, and it might seem like united gathering followed by music. However, as the day goes on and sun sets, story changes. I witnessed police surrounding the crowd and sending clear message for people to go home. But people are not intimidated by the helicopters, full armed police and sirens. What do protesters want? While this year's protests were triggered by the now suspended tax reform, they are a continuation of nationwide anti-government protests which began in November 2019. The protesters want the riot police to be disbanded and for all members of the security forces to be held accountable by an independent body rather than by military courts. We see kids armed by rocks and Molotov cocktails with their faces wrapped in an attempt to protect them from tear gas, heading straight to the military pushing the crowd. What young people want? They want inclusion. At this moment, they have high levels of poverty, high levels of unemployment. This is an extreme unequal society, and they want to be heard. Protesters argue it's time the security forces, which for decades were engaged in an armed conflict with powerful rebel groups, treat them like citizens rather than enemies.